At the age of 4, Oda was obsessed with anime, cinema, Disney cartoons, and foreign movies, just like every other kid. By the age of 4, he had already begun reading manga, and when he found out that creating manga was a career, he couldn't believe such a cool job existed. From that point forward, he declared that he would become a mangaka. The series that most influenced his realization was The Monster Kid, a story about a kid and his companions traveling through realms and battling various monsters. Oda says that one particular panel from this manga was the first to inspire him to draw. He would then draw countless copies of his favorite panel, striving to match Fujiko's skill. During this time, he also fell in love with the anime Vicky the Viking, a show that told the adventures of Vicky, a young Viking who used his witty and imaginative mind to help his friends out of tight situations. This show ignited Oda's lifelong passion for pirates and planted the seed that eventually grew into One Piece. When Oda's dad found out about his son's newfound ambitions, he decided to teach him to paint, as he himself was a talented oil painter. Oda has credited his dad for his creative side and still proudly shows off his dad's paintings to this day. As he got older, his manga taste matured and he gravitated towards Weekly Shonen Jump, an anthology of mostly action-based manga aimed at older readers. At this time, Oda entered junior high, which he found difficult. He didn't often enjoy it, and the only time he really felt happy was whenever he knew there was a new issue of Jump coming out the next day. He loved everything from the legendary gag series Kochikami to the action-packed Kinnikuman. Captain Tsubasa actually inspired Oda to join his school's soccer team just to compete with the characters in the show. As you can tell, he was a very impressionable kid and remains so to this day. Oda never dropped his love for soccer, with his favorite team being Brazil. He revealed in SBS that if Luffy were real, he would be from Brazil. So I can't help but think this was influenced by the soccer-themed manga. Oda found his biggest influences, though, when he stumbled across the series Dragon Ball. He was obsessed with Toriyama's art style and reread this series more than any other manga. He loved his character designs and practicing them. His dedication to practicing these designs significantly improved his ability to draw legendary buff characters. But the most important thing he ever got from Dragon Ball was that it showed him how impactful manga could be. When Dragon Ball was first gaining popularity across Japan, Oda recalls seeing his classmates' wild reactions to each new release at school. One day, he saw his school thrown into complete chaos by a single chapter. When Krillin died in Dragon Ball, the whole school was in uproar. I remember someone running up and down shouting, Krillin died," with a jump in his hand. Seeing the influence a great story could have completely reset the way Oda looked at manga and reinforced his desire to master the craft himself. This feeling stayed with Oda, and in his second year of junior high, he began developing his talent sketching ideas for a pirate-themed manga. For several years, Oda drew every day in his free time, sacrificing sleep and socializing. At the age of 17, he quit soccer to take his manga ambitions more seriously. He had learned about a prestigious manga competition from a company called Croatia. It was called the Tezuka Award, given to the best manga submitted by aspiring creators. Around the same time, Oda took a liking to a Western animated film called Young Guns, which inspired him to spend 4 months working on a full-length manga titled Wanted. It was an action-based comedy set in a Western-themed world. Oda was very proud of this creation and was excited to submit it, but he was also concerned that his parents and teachers would disapprove of his decision to focus all his efforts on this instead of school. To address this issue, he submitted his work under the pseudonym Tezuki Himazu. As the unknown prodigy he was, he won second place and received a 500,000 cash prize. Winning this award at such a young age sent shockwaves through the manga industry, and many professionals in the business started keeping an eye on him. In early 1993, Oda went on to get several interviews, and his manga was published. Around this time, he decided to drop his pseudonym and started using his real name, showing that he was growing more confident in his work and cared less about what others thought. His first professional interview was even published in his hometown's most prominent newspaper. Oda's life was changing very fast, and it was getting harder and harder for even his haters to doubt his talent. Later that year, he graduated from high school and entered Kyushu University under the architectural program. Although he never used his architecture skills in the actual field, I can't help but think this played a massive part in his unique city and island designs in One Piece. During university, Oda continued submitting more and more of his work to Shueisha, not knowing his previous win had already qualified him for a spot in the monthly offshoot of Weekly Shonen Jump. This spot was where Oda would release his next manga, God's Gift for the Future. This manga followed a pickpocket named Ryan who wanted to change his way of life but couldn't stop his bad habits. Through a series of unfortunate events, he winds up with a magical death notebook gifted to him by a god. The notebook allows him to predict exact dates of death in advance. If you read all of Oda's work in release order, you can see how each one gets progressively better and more complex. He already had a knack for two things in particular, character development and world building, but being the near psychopathically ambitious machine he was, even at a young age, he wasn't satisfied with only being in a monthly release magazine. So the following year in 1994, he decided to enter a contest named the Hot Step Awards with a manga named Ikiyako. Oda won first place with Ikiyako, giving him his first undisputed success as a mangaka. With his back-to-back awards and victories, Oda fondly believed he actually had a chance of his dream coming to fruition, so he took a big step. In the same year, 1994, he dropped out of university to pursue his career as a professional mangaka. Dropping out of college is a huge deal in Japan. Even if you become a success, many people will look down on you, as school is seen as a rite of passage. Despite everything, Oda was aware that he had to take this big risk regardless of the consequences. Ignoring everyone's advice, he relied on his confidence, impressive accolades, and newfound freedom to move to Tokyo under the guidance of his editor, Kurokushima. This marked his official start as a true mangaka. Working as an assistant at Shonen Jump, Oda made practically no money, but it was a necessary stepping stone that all mangaka had to take for a chance at publishing their own work one day. But the big problem here was that many worked as assistants for years or even decades without ever getting that chance, and often many of them broke under the extreme expectations imposed by the industry. The pressure was immense, and failure loomed like a shadow over their dreams. Yet Oda persisted, unaware of the challenges. Oda's first assistant job was for Shinobu Kaitani. It was only for the last few chapters of a series called Midoriyama Police Gang, so it only lasted just 1 month. However, Oda claims he was extremely busy this entire month, and that he also gained an immense amount of experience in the production of a professional manga. Oda was sent to another mangaka, Masaya Tokuhiro, who was in the final years of his manga Jungle King. Tokuhiro was also known as the creator of the more famous Kappa Man series. Oda would work for him for a very long time. Tokuhiro was infamous for being very resistant to allowing others to help with important parts of his work. This was very hard for Oda because he had many ideas. In the little free time he had after his 12 to 14-hour shifts, he would spend hours drawing cool ideas for his own stories, as well as ideas he thought might work for his sensei. Unfortunately, Tokuhiro never considered any of Oda's ideas. Despite this, Oda still learned a lot during this time period, specifically improving his skills in background art and crowd art. During this time period, he would create and submit several of his own stories to his editor Kushima. Almost all of them were immediately dismissed, but Oda tried not to take the harsh criticism to heart. This all changed when he created and released his next manga, Monsters. After thoroughly rereading it post-release and revisiting all his old works, he began to see many of his own inadequacies. This motivated Oda to work even harder and fix many of his mistakes. He started thinking that maybe his editor was right, telling him he just wasn't ready yet. Oda began to appreciate the transparency, but he took 2 big steps that later led to several health issues. He started sleeping only around 5 hours a night, even skipping meals because they took up too much time that he could use to improve his craft. When Kappa Man ended in mid-1996, Oda's boss moved on from Shueisha, and Oda entered his final assistantship under Nobuhiro Watsuki. He was now working on the best-selling manga Rurouni Kenshin, also known as Samurai X. This was a huge opportunity for Oda, as Watsuki was one of the most popular mangaka. Watsuki was known for having a much more laid-back style than Oda's previous bosses. He allowed his assistants to be involved in his work, speak their minds, and he even reviewed their ideas seriously. While he didn't approve every suggestion, he believed that hands-on experience and active involvement were the best ways to learn rather than just doing busy work. Oda thrived in this supportive environment, and one of his ideas managed to pass all the hurdles, eventually being featured in the Rurouni Kenshin manga. He is credited with creating the character Kamatari Anjo. This was a major achievement for Oda, adding significant credibility to his future suggestions. Oda would never forget the faith Watsuki had in him, though unfortunately this would come with some significant consequences later on. Oda was really enjoying his time in Watsuki's studio, but he remained troubled by the fact that his own ideas for manga drafts were continuously getting rejected. Oda decided that since all his new ideas weren't good enough, he would revamp his original idea for an anime. Putting in a last-ditch effort, Oda began to work on a pirate-themed manga, which he decided to call Romance Dawn. Despite his doubts, Oda submitted it to his editor, but to his surprise, Kushima was very impressed by it and approved it for further development. It debuted in the Shonen Jump Summer Special and received much praise from the readers. During the production of Romance Dawn, Oda fell under the supervision of a new editor, Takanori Asada. Asada also believed in Romance Dawn and arranged for Oda to fill an unexpected gap in the weekly Shonen Jump magazine that was coming up. This was an incredibly rare and unique opportunity. Oda accepted, and he immediately created the second version of Romance Dawn. Within 2 weeks, it was approved by Asada. However, something unusual was happening. The reader feedback was positive, and they loved the unique pirate-themed story. Oda's handlers also believed in his concept, but the higher-ups were very skeptical and doubted Oda's ideas. They straight up refused it entirely, as they were hesitant to try anything new and wanted more of what had already worked. However, Oda specifically set out to do the exact opposite. This was influenced by 2 of Oda's earlier influences. Firstly, Dragon Ball, which he loved for its fights and designs, but he wished it was more story-oriented with a longer-term payoff for the readers. Secondly, an unexpected influence was The Wizard of Oz. Oda loved the adventure aspect of the story and even implemented it in many of his own works. However, he disliked the ending of the classic movie. He thought that the real treasure was the friends we made along the way. The trope was completely stupid, and that fans deserved a build-up and payoff. Oda basically was inventing the slow burn style of manga, a manga that pulled readers in through world building rather than just flashy fights. Luckily for Oda, Asada wasn't having any of his supervisors' nonsense. He waged war on them, proclaiming that Oda had something great on his hands, and he continued this campaign for months. In May 1997, One Piece was finally approved for publishing in the Weekly Shonen Jump magazine. Shortly after, Oda resigned from being Watsuki's assistant on good terms and became a full-fledged professional mangaka himself at the young age of 22. His adventure was about to reach heights and face challenges that he never could have imagined. Oda's obsessive nature and hard work had finally paid off, and he wasn't about to let it go to waste. He would double down on his efforts one more time, and from this point forward, things would start moving incredibly quickly. Oda would take everything he had learned and created over the years, and immediately start drafting the very first 8 chapters of One Piece. Asada would lend him a hand, helping helping him refine his ideas and offering advice that he thought would give One Piece a higher chance of success. After all, he was invested in this too. In the first couple of chapters, he thought Oda had some great concepts, but it wasn't exciting enough. He needed more stakes, something to hook people and leave them wanting more. This led to the idea of the Shanks incident that happened in the first chapter. I personally think this was a great decision and really set the tone for the rest of the story. In July of 1997, Weekly Shonen Jump released the very first chapter of One Piece titled Romance Dawn, giving homage to Oda's Romance Dawn manga that started it all. When they finished, they were pretty sure they had something good in their hands, but they were so nervous that it wouldn't do well. They just couldn't shake those butterflies. When the first volume was released, Oda and his editor would hide in a bookstore and watch the customers. When they saw a little boy buying the One Piece volume, they would shout with pure joy. By the end of One Piece's very first year, it had sold over 300,000 copies, making it an undeniable hit. But this was nothing compared to what was about to happen. Only 1 year later, this number would grow to 6 million copies sold, with no sign of slowing down. By 1999, One Piece had reached over 17 million prints. In the same year, it received a full-length anime adaptation, which became another instant smash across Japan. By 2001, Oda was only 26 years old and had the world at his fingertips. He was a rising mangaka, receiving more interviews and festival bookings than he could handle. However, the most life-altering appearance would happen at Jump Festa 2002. While watching the performances, he saw 22-year-old Chiaki Inaba during her show. She performed a Nami cosplay, showing her love for her favorite anime character, which just happened to be created by Oda himself. Her beauty and talent left Oda smitten. It was like a scene from a romance anime. He had no choice but to introduce himself, which he did later that same day. Over the next 2 years, they began seeing each other, squeezing in dates between her performances and Oda's busy work schedule. In 2004, they got married in a private wedding attended only by their closest friends. Around this time, One Piece and Shonen Jump were more popular than ever. Manga and anime were spreading worldwide, but there was an unprecedented surge in anime's popularity in a specific Western country, the United States. The catalyst for this takeover was 3 shonen anime, in particular One Piece, Naruto, and Bleach. They were deemed the Big Three, a title bestowed on the 3 most popular anime of the 2000s. The 3 series completely carried Shonen Jump during this entire period. Voted by Romance Dawn, pushing his dreams back years, Bleach wouldn't be released in Jump until 2001, and Kubo directly held Oda responsible. In a 2017 interview, when asked how he felt about his rival, he said, "I hate Oda." He also revealed that the two had a tense run in the 1990s. A few years later, Oda had a chance to respond in his own interview during a Bleach exhibit for its 20th anniversary. When asked about Kubo, he said, "Years ago, Kubo publicly announced he hates me. Do you want to know if I hold a grudge against him?" Yes, I do." He went on to say he didn't know if Kubo meant it in a particularly rude way or in a competitive way, because he knows that Kubo has a very competitive spirit. He has always been a hard worker, but Oda does say Kubo had some audacity to say that in public, basically letting everybody know that he's always ready for a challenge. Oda would later draw Kubo's character Ichigo in the One Piece art style and submit it to the exposition. Oda and Naruto's creator Kishimoto are also considered rivals, but in a very different way. In 2015, Oda admitted that Naruto is more popular than One Piece worldwide. He appreciates it, but admits it makes him a little jealous. In 2016, Kishimoto said that he wanted to surpass One Piece in manga sales, but he was never able to do so before Naruto ended. Since One Piece is still ongoing and its popularity has exploded worldwide in recent years, the final results aren't in yet. Either way, the two have been the most dominant manga creators in the world for almost 2 decades. Their respect for each other is evident, as shown through the Easter eggs hidden throughout both series, which shout out each other's manga. One of the most wholesome but scary examples occurred in 2013. Oda had become notorious for his machine-like work ethic. He was only sleeping 3 hours a night, and he often slept at his work desk so he could wake up and get back to work faster. This lifestyle caused his health to deteriorate, and he was hospitalized. Knowing that Oda doesn't like to take days off, Kishimoto showed up at his hospital room to check on his friend. He was shocked to see Oda working in his hospital bed. He was drawing an up-and-coming One Piece chapter. He understood Oda's level of work ethic better than anyone else on the planet. Instead of asking him to stop, he pulled up a chair and helped Oda with his work, because he felt that's what he really needed. It would later be revealed that this was the legendary Dressrosa arc. They really wanted this art to be special to not let his fans down because of his sickness. As Oda's journey continues, his impact on the world of manga and beyond is undeniable. As we eagerly await for each new chapter of his epic tale, we are reminded that the greatest stories are not just the ones we read, but the ones we live.